Hi, welcome to the recap room. In today's video, we'll be talking about a biography and drama film entitled The Pursuit of Happiness. Warning, spoilers ahead. The movie begins with a scene where a father wakes up his son. Then they head out to go to his school. After dropping off his son, the man notices a foul word written on the wall and asks when it will be cleaned. He also corrects the misspelled word happiness and says it should not be a Y but an I instead. The man's name is Chris Gardner. The film is set in San Francisco in the year 1981. He was waiting at a bus stop when a man notices the strange thing he was holding. He reveals that the machine on his lap is a portable bone density scanner, a medical device he sells for a living. The doctor he met says that the device is unnecessary and expensive. Chris admits that it gave a slightly denser picture than an X-ray for twice the money. He then meets with his partner, Linda, saying he can't pick up Christopher, their son. He says he needs to go to Oakland, but Linda complains, saying her next shift is at 7 p.m. We then see his car towed on the road, but he didn't care since he's in a rush to meet another doctor. Chris needs to sell at least 2 scanners a month for rent and daycare, and he needs to sell one more to pay for all those tickets under his windshield wiper. But the problem is, he hasn't sold any for a while. During dinner, Chris notices a Rubik's Cube that was given as a gift to his son. Linda then asks him if he already paid the taxes. Chris replies that he's going to have to file another extension. Thinking about the interest and penalty it could add, her partner gets stressed about it. But Chris asks her to just relax and calm down, saying he will handle it. After putting his son to bed, Chris plays with the Rubik's Cube and successfully solves it after a while. The next day, while he was down the street, he notices a nice car and asks his owner what he does for a living. The man then reveals that he's a stockbroker. Chris asks if a college degree is needed to be a stockbroker. The man replies it's not necessarily required. He says you just have to be good with numbers and be good with people. Chris then notices that the people there are so happy. He then asks why he can't be like them. The next morning, Chris tells Linda that he'll try to come home by 6. He just needs to stop by a brokerage firm after work to apply as a stockbroker. Linda doesn't seem to be happy with it and asks him to just do his sales calls. In addition, she reminds him that their rent is due next week. She is disappointed, saying she has been pulling double shifts for 4 months already.
I'm pulling double shifts for 4 months now, Chris.
We then see Chris. He decides to leave his medical device to a street performer. She hands her $1 and asks her to keep it for just 5 minutes because he doesn't want to bring it inside. Chris goes inside to proceed with his application. But then from the window, he sees the performer running with his scanner. He then runs to find her at the train station, but she quickly escapes by riding the train. On his way home, he stares at his application form, thinking how small his chance is to get in, since he didn't even get to go to college. While they were eating breakfast the next day, Chris watches a program on TV that talks about how hard it is to solve the Rubik's Cube. On their way to work, Linda asks Chris to make sure he goes home without the scanner. Chris promises he'll get rid of it. He then walks his son to school and educates his son about the correct spelling of happiness. Then they talk about their nicknames. Chris reveals his name 10-Gallon Head because he grew up near Texas and they used to wear cowboy hats. A 10-gallon is a big hat, and because he was smart back then, they call him 10-Gallon Head. Christopher then reveals that he's seen that hat on TV at daycare. Chris is surprised that they watch TV shows at the daycare and confronts Mrs. Shu. She says it's for history. He can't believe he's paying $150 a month at that daycare and they only watch TV all day. She then tells him to pay more at another daycare if he doesn't like it. He then goes to Dean Widow Reynolds to deliver his filled-up application form personally to Mr. J. Twistle, the Widow Resource head. When he arrives, he introduces himself and hands over his paper, but Mr. Twistle says they'll just call him. Outside, Chris does his sales call and makes an appointment. But he then sees the performer who stole his device with another man carrying it. He runs after them and then recalls how he spent all their life saving to be the exclusive distributor of that device in the Bay Area. It was a revolutionary machine, but he didn't know that doctors and hospitals consider them unnecessary luxuries. Losing one means losing a month's worth of groceries. Finally, he catches them at the bus and gets his scanner back. While at the bus stop, Christopher reminds his dad that he's supposed to get rid of the device, but now he has 2. In the living room, Linda and Chris then hand Christopher his birthday gift. After that, Chris then talks to Linda about what has happened, but Linda doesn't even want to hear it. He then assures her that everything will be alright, but she is not happy with it. The next day, Chris approaches Jay and reminds him of his application, but he's in a hurry and says he needs to go to Noe Valley. Mr. Twistle was about to ride a cab when Chris says he needs to go there too and suggests they can share the ride. On the way, Chris talks about his experiences while Jay was very busy solving the Rubik's Cube. Chris is then distracted, and when Mr. Twistle says the Rubik's Cube is impossible to solve, he asks him to hand it to him because he knows how to solve it. Jay doesn't believe him, but Chris shows him how to do it. He solves it just in time when Mr. Twistle arrives at his destination. However, Jay didn't pay for the taxi, and since Chris is left in the cab, he had to pay the bill. He looks at his wallets and sees he doesn't have enough money for it, and so he decides to run for it. He escapes by entering a train station, but even there, the cab driver followed him. When he rode the train, his hand was caught on the door. Left with no choice, he lets go of the device in his hand. Chris calls her wife and apologizes for not making it on time. She then complains about missing her shift. Linda informs him that she has decided to leave with her son, Christopher. It was right then that he started thinking about Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence. While running home, he then realizes that maybe happiness is something we can only pursue, and maybe we can't really have it. As soon as he reaches their home, he goes looking for his partner and son, but they were already gone. Suddenly, the phone rings and it was Mr. Jay Twistle telling him about the upcoming interview for the interns. Jay asked him to write down the secretary's number, but after seeing that he had no pen nearby, he just memorized it. He went out to look for his family and then writes the number using the pen and paper at a store nearby. The next day, Chris confronts Linda, who just dropped off their son at daycare. Linda admits she's not happy anymore, while Chris says Christopher will be living with him. He then picks up Christopher at daycare and brings him home. While preparing their dinner, the landlord knocks at the door. He's asking Chris for the rent, but he asks for an extension. He then agrees and gives him 10 more days after Chris promises to paint the house for him. The next day, Chris paints the walls when suddenly the police come over. He was asked to pay for his tickets at the police station. However, he can't leave until it's been verified. He has to wait until 9:30 the next morning. With no other choice, Chris calls Linda and asks her to pick up Christopher because he can't. He asks her to take care of him just for one night and makes her promises to give his son back after. It was already 9:45 the next day when Chris was allowed to leave the police station. He then runs to go for his interview at Dean Wither's. Unfortunately, he didn't have the time to take a bath or change his clothes. He then goes inside and sees the chaotic office. The panel is obviously disappointed to see how he looks when he entered the room. But before they even get to say something, Chris admits why he's dressed like that. He says he's been arrested because of parking tickets, and prior to that he was painting their house. Despite it, Chris managed to pull off the interview. Jay then congratulates him outside. However, he reveals that he will still think about it after learning that there is no salary yet during the intern period. Jay can't believe him after begging him for the interview for quite a while. Jay says if he backs out, the partners would be disappointed in him, and so he says he will fill his spot just for tonight. Chris heads home and waits for Linda and their son. They arrive late that night. When they brought Christopher to his room, Linda reveals that she's going to New York to work as a waitress. Chris then says Christopher will stay with him. When asked where he'll get the money, he then reveals that he got accepted as an intern. Before she leaves, Linda asks Chris to tell their son that she loves him. That night, he calls Jay and says he's accepting the internship. Chris then packs all their belongings and leave their house the next day. They moved to a nearby motel with the help of Chris's friend. That Saturday, Chris invites his son to play basketball. While shooting the ball, Christopher shares his desire to go pro. However, Chris discourages him, saying he might excel at other things, but not at basketball. Hearing this, Christopher is obviously disheartened. Chris noticed the impact his word made on his son, and so later, he asked him never to let somebody tell him he can't do something, not even him. He adds that if he has a dream, he has to protect it and work hard for it. Then they leave to sell his scanner. Fortunately, the doctor buys his device, and so he was able to get some money. The next day, Chris goes to his internship and learns about the industry. The instructor hands them a book and asks them to study it carefully. During the break, Chris meets Mr. Fromm while walking in the street. During their conversation, he suddenly sees the scanner he left on the train carried by a guy. But when he crossed the street, he was hit by a car. He was unharmed, but he lost one of his shoes. He then returns back to their office with only one shoe on. Afterward, he picks up his son from the daycare and reveals he was hit by a car. Christopher then asks his dad to take care of himself. The next morning, Chris went early to the office for his internship. During training, while he was making his calls, their office manager kept asking Chris for favors all day. By 4, he then leaves to pick up his son and then goes home. It's been his daily routine since he started his internship. One day, Chris decides to just call the company's CEO from his list. Luckily, Mr. Walter Rhobh agrees to meet with him, but he asks to be in his office in 20 minutes. However, on his way out, the office manager asked him to park his car somewhere. Because of it, he missed his meeting with the CEO. That night, as Chris and his son were eating dinner, he tells his son he was bringing him on the weekend to sell his scanners and do some sale calls. And then he adds that they might possibly go to a football game. And so the next morning, Christopher was so excited as they were walking to Mr. Rhobh's house. He knocks on their door and it was Mr. Rhobh himself who opened the door for him. Chris then apologizes for missing their meeting and asks if they can reschedule it. Mr. Rhobh agrees and then invites them to go watch the football game with them. Because of it, Chris didn't only have the chance to talk about their business to Mr. Rhobh, but he got to talk with his businessman friends too. Finally, after 4 months, they have sold all the scanners. It seemed like they were doing good, but then Chris receives a letter that says the RAS took the money from his bank account for his unpaid taxes. Now he was left with only $21.33. Realizing that he's now broke, Chris goes to collect $40 from his friend Wayne, but he answered that he thought it's already been paid since he helped him move. Chris can't believe it. While they were in the park, Chris sees his missing scanner. He then cleans it and brings it to different hospitals to sell. However, when he brought it to a buyer, it was not working. Luckily, the doctor says they will pay for it once the scanner is fixed. When they went home that night, all of their things were left outside and the doorknob was changed. Left with no choice, they then leave and look for a place to stay. They end up in a train station. The next day, Chris and his son try to go to a shelter, but the woman in charge says they only take women and children. She then tells him to try Glide Memorial. She says the building books up at 5, and so they need to hurry and go there since there's a line. They waited patiently in line, but when the one in charge announces that there were only 4 slots left, someone tries to slice in front of him in line. Fortunately, when they have proven that the other one cheated, they were able to get in. Inside the shelter, after Chris put his son to bed, he then goes outside to fix his scanner. The next following days, Chris goes to his office carrying all their things. He learned to finish his work quickly so they could get in line at Glide by 5 every day. While they were eating, Chris then studies for his internship exam. During his exam day, Chris manages to finish answering his exam quickly. Outside, he then meets Jeff from the 49ers game who gives him his number. Mr. Fromm, who is about to ride a taxi, then spots Chris and asks him for $5. He was in a hurry and he left his wallet upstairs. Even though he doesn't have much, Chris still lends him $5. While they were waiting in line at Glide, the one in charge announces that the room's already full and so they end up sleeping on the train. Chris then decides to donate his blood to earn money. He used that money to buy a bulb to repair the light in his scanner. That night, Christopher asks his dad if he's the reason why his mom left. But Chris answers that he's got nothing to do with it. Christopher then calls him a good papa. After that, Chris successfully makes the scanner work. The following day, he was able to finally sell it. And that night, Chris decides that they should sleep in the hotel instead. The next day, after work, they just went to the beach, far away from anything. We then see Jay congratulating Chris when he saw him in the bathroom, signing many clients from Pacific Bell. At the office, Mr. Frackish calls Chris and brings him to Mr. Fromm. He notices that Chris is wearing a new shirt, and he responds by saying he wants to wear it being his last day in internship. Mr. Fromm then appreciates it and asks if he can wear one again tomorrow because it would be his first day if he wishes to work there as a broker. Chris tries to hold his tears as he thanks the panel, and before he leaves, Mr. Fromm hands him the money he owed him. Chris then goes outside and thinks that this part of his life is called happiness. He went straight to the daycare and hugs his son tight. It was then revealed that after Chris Gardner's career at Dinwiddie, he then went out to found the investment firm Gardner Ridge in 1987. The movie ends with Chris and his son sharing jokes while they are walking. The real Chris Gardner then passes by them. In 2006, Chris Gardner sold a minority stake in his brokerage firm in a multi-million-dollar deal. And that's the end of this video. For more movie recaps like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell as well so that you are notified on our next uploads. Thank you for watching.